Hey YouTube, it's Nick, and today's episode will be about spirit photography. So I've done a lot of research for this one. It's about like 8 pages, 10 pages worth of research for this, because I wanted to get my facts as straight as possible and kind of let you guys know, because this is more of a broader topic, the history behind it, the mythology behind it, the falsehoods behind it, because there was a ton of fraud and still is, unfortunately, and just kind of go from there. So spiritual photography has 3 different usually used ways of description, which is spirit photography, ghost photography, and psychic photography. It is photography where the primary goal is to capture images of life after death, whether it is a spiritual entity or an entity in a spiritual realm, meaning that it could be a demon, it could be some sort of otherworldly being. So basically any entity on a different plane. So spirit photography really became popular in the 1860s, and that was by William H. Mumler. But before we talk about William H. Mumler, we have to kind of go back a little bit further to the 1840s for a prerequisite for it. In the 1840s, something called Spiritualism, which was a religious movement, started and continues even into this day. The reason that we're talking about them is because their belief system goes hand in hand kind of with ghost hunting and spiritual investigation. So the big belief for them is that the spirits of the dead exist, and that not only do they exist, but they have a strong desire and capability to speak with us. One of the other major beliefs that they have is that the spiritual realm that they reside in isn't necessarily a static plane. It's more so ever-changing, ever-evolving, and as spiritual activity increases and things change and more spirits are added and, belief systems change, the power and energy level adjusts the capabilities of the spirits involved. The next part to this is that it is very, very, very heavily implied that there are spiritual guides. The spiritual guides have a need to communicate and kind of let you know what's important in your life, what's going on, and what's going to happen, what's happened in the past, and just kind of guide you into the right path. Now, what goes along with them is mediums and seances. Mediums have the ability to communicate with the spiritual world and talk to spirits and the other entities in that world. Now, the issue is that if you want to communicate with them as well, and you want to have that ability to have a one-on-one kind of conversation, they would have a seance. It was basically to let those that were not really in tune with the spiritual world have the ability to reach out to their spirit guides or family members or whatever and communicate with them and get those messages across that wouldn't otherwise be able to come to them. So the thirst for all of this knowledge really left people asking for scientific proof, because just like now, there's a lot of skeptics, and they wanted proof so that they could firmly place their belief in something. This is where Mumler comes in. In the 1860s, he makes a mistake. Mumler was a jewelry engraver that had a side passion for photography. He took a self-portrait, and when he did so, he made a mistake and noticed that there was a girl behind him, and she looked very, very familiar. And then he realized that the girl looked exactly like his cousin, who had died 12 years prior. So the photo makes its way over to the spiritualists, and they become enthralled, because obviously this is the first sign, the first proof that the afterlife exists. Now we have something firm that we can put our faith and belief into. So what happens? They all want their own! So they reach out to Mumler and they ask him, hey, can you please take a picture of me? I want to see if I have a spiritual guide around me, or if I can see my Uncle Paul, or my mom, or whoever. They list a family member off. So Mumler realizes, hey, this is a quick way to cash in. Sure, why not? And he figures out a way to actually forge these pictures. This is when it gets bad. He charges people $10 for these pictures. Now, to put this in perspective, in the 1860s, the average going rate for a photo to be taken of you was 25 cents. Now, he would charge them $10 to have their photo taken. To kind of give you a perspective on that, throwing in inflation for today's rates, comes out to about $308. And that was per session. He would have times where he would go, well, nothing showed up in here, I guess you're gonna have to come back. So they'd have to dish out another 10 bucks, which is again, $308. And before you know it, if they go for 3 sessions, you're looking at almost $1,000. Now, the biggest method that Mumler used was something called double exposure. Essentially what that was when you take your camera, you take a photo, and you quickly cover it up. You wait a little bit, you go and you find somebody else, pose them in a specific way, open it up, and finish the exposure. So what happens is you have a very strong picture in the front, and then you have a weaker picture of somebody doing something else, like in the picture of Mary Todd Lincoln and Abe Lincoln. Have a look-alike in the background. Boom, there it is. So now flash forward to modern day. We have a couple different versions of ghosts that you may or may not see in images. The first are orbs. Now, orbs are also called ghost lights, but typically what happens in these are the most debunked ones, are you take a picture, the flash goes off, hits a dust particle, and reflects back. A lot of people that still follow spiritualism and still have a heavy belief in the paranormal, they may not always believe that it's just a piece of dust. So what they believe is that the orb is just a pre-apparition form of a ghost. Basically, it is the fastest and easiest way to move around without expending a ton of energy. Makes a lot of sense if the ghost is trying to conserve its energy, moves around in just that orb form. The second thing that you'll see a lot of is ectoplasm or ectomist. Usually what ectoplasm or ectomist contains in the photo is a picture of mist that is kind of like a vapor or a smoke, and it tends to be a couple feet off of the ground, so that way it's not connected to the floor. Sometimes you'll actually see apparition pieces in there, so you may see a face, you may see a hand, you may see an arm, you might see a piece of that ghost that's starting to form, because a lot of people believe that when you see this mist, it is actually the precursor to the full apparition. A lot of times these specific ones are pictured outside at a graveyard, at an old battle site, at a historic site, somewhere where there was a lot of death, or that a lot of emotion can occur. I've heard of people taking pictures inside of movie theaters before the movie starts and seeing these. And that's because, again, these are high energy places, and this is where spirits pick up a lot of energy. One of the third types of ghosts that you're going to see are Vortex, Wisp, or funnel ghosts. Usually these are taken in an area where it is considered to be haunted, but is inside. So you may see these typically around an area where a cold spot is noted, because it is an absorption of energy. Normally what's notated in this area is a swirling light, or a group of lights, or a mist with lights, but it's got a light somewhere inside of it. The fourth form is the full or partial apparition. So essentially what you're seeing is either the ghost, or you're seeing a piece of the ghost in a reflective surface, in a mirror, in a doorway, in the hallway. You're seeing something that wasn't there when you took the picture. A lot of times, photos that you'll see online are ones where you'll see a face in a mirror, or you'll see a face in the window behind somebody in a picture, or you'll see an extra arm coming out from behind somebody, or you'll see something like that, or you'll see a hand on somebody's shoulder. Something that wasn't there when the photo actually happened. Now again, I am not strictly here to be like, all ghost, all the way, all the time. I know that there are natural explanations for things. I went to school originally for forensic chemistry and toxicology, so I do know that there are reasons that things can happen that are not supernatural. So some of the natural explanations for these are long exposures, reflections, if there's a dust on the negative when it was an older picture and you actually have the film, orbs created by dust and light and flash. So when you take a picture and the light reflects off of the dust particle and it bounces back and creates that orb in the picture. Lens flare can create some of these mists and things like that. If it's a really cold day out and you are the one taking the picture and you take a picture and you see a mist, it could just be your own breath. It could also be light lag, or if you're using an app on your phone, it could be a faulty app. I've had a couple times where an app has glitched and it like dragged out a picture and things like that. So it's very possible that it is something like that. Coming from spiritual photographers, there are a few ways that you can kind of make sure that you are capturing the most accurate picture. First way is to take a picture 3 times in rapid succession in the area that you're taking the picture. The second is to try and take that picture when you're actually having an occurrence going on. So if you're actually getting an EVP recording, or you're using a spirit box and you're hearing ghosts interact with you, you could have something around you. So if you take a picture, maybe a little bit more plausible. Another way, which I really don't recommend, but is another form of doing it, to ask the spirit and just say, hey, if you're here, can you kind of get in the picture? Now there are a plethora of books on spirit photography. There are quite a few that I heard about but haven't read yet. One of the ones that I actually did was called Ghost Worlds, so I highly recommend it, but it does go through all of the information about ghost hunting and what type of ghosts there are out there, and, you know, spiritual photography and where you'll find ghosts and what kind of entities there are. It's really, really thorough and very interesting read. I picked this up, I think, back when like freaking Borders was still open. I would not be surprised if you can get it pretty cheap online. But it is by Melba Goodwin. And no, this is not sponsored. So I'm just letting you know of another book that's out there that I think you guys would enjoy and really focuses in on this topic and kind of goes into the things that I've talked about regarding, you know, the ectomist portals that you may see into the spiritual world, things like that. So it's very thorough, very interesting. The other thing is to be very cautious when you are looking into spirit photography, not because it's extremely dangerous or anything like that, but there is so much forgery out there. There is so much fraud. And even if you look at like old pictures, like this one, for example, it's got wear and tear. So things that could be advertised as ghosts in an older photo could just be something that the picture wasn't taken extremely good care of, and it has wear and tear in it, where you can see like pieces are missing. But if you look at it from far away, or, you know, they scan it in properly, it could just look like, you know, there's something behind him. So this video was meant to be a relatively short one. It was meant to be something entertaining in these trying times, and meant to just provide a little bit of information out there about the history of spirit photography and kind of the information that goes into it. Another big topic that is heavily involved with these are ectoplasm and things that you'd see during a seance, which were completely falsified in these photos. So when you look things up online, take everything at a grain of salt. During ghost hunting, spirit photography is one of those ones where you really have to pay attention to, because there's so many different scientific explanations for things going on. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of photos out there where science just cannot explain it, and they're extremely interesting, and I encourage you to go and look these things up. Now, the other reason that I have this video as kind of shorter in the beginning is because I did want to take the time at the end of this video to discuss some of the things going on in the world right now, especially because of the kind of person I am. It would be extremely remiss of me not to mention everything. I have a lot of friends that are very fearful right now, and have been for a huge chunk of their lives because of the injustices that they face, the profiling that they face, and the struggles that they face on a day-to-day basis to just have the same and equal rights that we all take for granted. And having conversations with them about the fear that they have on a daily basis for things that could happen to them just because of the color of their skin is horrifying. And this movement that's going on right now is extremely important. And I know a lot of people are upset because of rioting and something that is outside of the norm that they are content with and happy with. And you can't be. You can't be content. You can't be happy with the injustices that are going on, with the amount of control that is occurring. There are so many people that have been put away into jail, that have been profiled and accused falsely of crimes, that have been punished to the fullest extent for something that, if you were Caucasian, you would get away with. And it's repulsive. The world has to change. The US has to change. Things have to change. And I was talking to one of my friends about it, and she said, I feel comfortable coming to you because in your own way, you have been discriminated against as well. And I'm not going to get too much into this video, but needless to say, biases, bigotry, and hatred are learned and taught. You have a clean slate when you have a kid, and you need to remember that what you impress upon them is what they grow up to be. And to be told that I'm going to burn in hell, to be told horrible slurs, and to be belittled on a daily basis and forced out of jobs because of the fact that I love somebody of the same gender is repulsive. The fact that this morning I woke up to YouTube deleting 3 comments with homophobic slurs is repulsive. The world needs to change. And the way that we need to start it is to help those that are oppressed the most. And that means that the Black Lives Movement has to happen. So for those of you that are upset that the social norm is changing, you need to grow up. And you need to realize that we need to create a world of equality and love and care. Not a world of bigotry, hatred, and profiling. I've gone on long enough about this, and if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen that I've been retweeting and I've been paying attention to everything going on in the world. And I encourage you to do the same. I encourage you to support this movement, and I encourage you to support the people that are protesting, because this is how the world will change, and it will be for the positive. I have friends and family members that are police officers, and they are equally disgusted with the state that we are in. And we need to get this fixed. And the only way that this is going to happen is to make your voice heard. So please do that. Please vote. please make sure you are supporting in whatever way you can this movement. And that's what I've got to say about it. And I encourage you to pay attention, do research, make your voices heard, and support as much as you can in whatever way you can. Thank you. And I hope you all have a safe and good week.